Today, my guest is from the UK, Mr. Miles Johnson. Miles, are you there?
Yes, I am, and hello and welcome from a very rainy Wiltshire, and I gather it's raining where you are.
Well, as we spoke earlier, yes, I'm up in southern Oregon, and we're enjoying some unseasonable rain up here, and it's just wonderful. The air is clear and clean, and just a delightful summer rain. So how are things in Wiltshire?
Well, things in Wiltshire are very exciting. We've had 3 days of chemtrails. In fact, chemtrails which are so weird that one chemtrail had 2 different types of trail out of the same aircraft. And the 2 corresponding trails behaved quite differently, and I thought that was rather strange. But I'm here relocating from West London, and right with me is also a brilliant lady called Marie Kayali, and she has a heck of a story to tell. Fundamentally, she's a very switched-on girl, well, I'll let her tell her story. But in a nutshell...
I have an idea. Why don't we introduce you to the listeners? This is a new audience for you. So why don't we introduce you, and then why don't we let Maria introduce herself, then, and we can go about it that way, so that everybody understands who we're talking to. I think that we have to keep this, at the fundamental level to start.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yes, my name is Miles, and I have been in the UFO research business from Northern Ireland, from Belfast, for most of my life. What I've been doing in terms of the immediate, I've done a lot of pirate radio, which is a free form of radio which emerged in the early 60s in the British Isles, because the authorities here were so strangely reticent to allow any new thing to happen. And subsequently we discovered over many years why that's the case, and it's because we have a predator controlling just about everything we do, and particularly any kind of expression of information or thought. And that predator's agenda seems to be ultimately to wipe us all out, so in one way or another, or to control or shut us down, those that do survive. And that information comes from a variety of sources, one of which was John Irwin, who's one of the many people I've interviewed in the BASIS project. And the BASIS project emerged in the 1994, sort of 93, 94, when we interviewed a guy called Barry King, or I interviewed a guy called Barry King, and another girl called Lisa Williams. And Barry King essentially is talking about the creation of programmed cyborg entities, or program-generated life forms in Berkshire, in England. And his father... as part of the end of the World War II cleanup in Germany, his father was part of the British intelligence cleanup search and don't destroy team. And his father discovered a German laboratory in southern Germany where there were a number of strange-looking humans in this lab, and also a strange kind of aircraft. Now, at that time, they didn't have any concept of them being extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional. And the purpose of this lab was to acclimatize, that's to say, when humans came in contact with these strange-looking other humans, the bioelectric or biogenic field that was produced by you and them, or us and them, was so incompatible that they physically couldn't relate. So the Germans, during the war, was trying to find out how to connect this, how to make it to work. Now, it seems then that this basic technology was then brought to England, and these labs were essentially set up in Berkshire. The Peasmore lab is basically just west of London, down the M4, which is the western main highway in England. And this is the area where we have the crop circles, and it's the area where we have a lot of military bases. And the key thing about the crop circles is it seems to be apart from nice people running around in the fields with boards, it's a consciousness engineering type of phenomena where they seem to be deliberately playing with their consciousness. But also the fakers, the people who fake the crop circles, have time-space anomaly issues, and they also engage with shadow entities, not too dissimilar to the Montauk type project type entities.
Okay, let me understand this. So the guys who are creating the hoaxes, the fake crop circles, are also having issues that they can't account for as a result of their interfering or trying to pull off a hoax.
Yeah, this is one of the key things about my conference, the Basis Project conference. After 20 years, I thought I'd hold a conference. I'm holding it on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of August in Marlborough College, and that's on my website, thebasisproject.org. One of the biggest things that's been not looked at is who these people are, the people who fake, the so-called fake crop circles. There's no such thing as a fake crop circle, in that it doesn't matter who makes them, it's the fact that we look at them and we go into them and experience them. So, for instance, one of the U.S. researchers that comes here, I think almost every year, is Dr. Simeon Hine, and he had a fairly small crop circle manufactured by some of the circle makers a good 10 years ago. Now, the thing about this is the guys who were making the formation weren't going to have enough time to finish that off. They weren't going to have time. Physically, the sun was going to come up. Where they were making it was deliberately quite close to one of the main roads here, so they're going to be seen by very easily. But what happened was they had a temporal distort anomaly issue, which allowed them to finish off the formation. They were given an extra hour, but as far as the lookout is concerned, the guy he was sort of saying, "Hey, look, guys, there's somebody coming." He said they're only in there for 3 hours, but they were actually in there for 4 hours and were able to finish it off. Now, this is important because there seems to be a temporal anomaly or reality distort issue here. And in fact, some analysts have suggested that some of the early crop circles that were made by Doug and Dave and other people like that were actually energy weapon systems diagrams, where you had a set of coils, some kind of focusing apparatus, and they were actually telling us in the fake crop circles how they were doing the reality management technology. And so it seems that some kind of space-time stuff has been going on here since the war, with some kind of connection to the Nazi bell, which has been producing a number of time-space anomaly issues. Now, on a completely different location in Northern Ireland, we had a crop circle in long grass, in the sort of natural, very long grass, and that also involved a 1 hour time difference. But one of the major crop circles that I actually investigated is the 777 crop circle on the East Field, and that's where a brilliant colleague of mine called Winston Keach, who's been got his cameras, he's been observing so many things. He's been observing lots of extra-dimensional alien-type orb or entity activity in Wales. There's an awful lot of places in the British Isles which have got military bases and grey activity or some kind of alien connection. So let's make it absolutely clear. The British military, the British have been dealing with non-human entities of some kind since during World War II on a very large scale. And quite a few of the bases here have got some kind of connection with these. Now, Marie, who will be talking soon, she was actually with the police. She was falsely arrested very recently, and that involved sort of a shape-shifting incident. But I'll let her talk that. So, I mean, the police are involved with this. One of the pirate radio stations that I built, a 1 megawatt FM station on the Irish border in Monaghan, with my colleague Lawrence John, he actually was abducted or went missing for 4 days. He was actually physically listed as missing, and they had search parties out on the Irish border. And I mean, even though they have a peace process, I mean, that's a pretty monitored border to this day. So when somebody goes missing for that length of time, it's a pretty serious thing. It's not a very big border. It's not too many places you can hide. I mean, it's not like as if it's a sort of the border between America and Canada, you know. But when I reported to the police that this guy could have been abducted by aliens, the Northern Ireland Police Service were not surprised. It wasn't a big deal to them that they would have heard of an alien abduction. And so the level of the alien abduction and the control of some kind of other elements in society seem to be relatively well known across society. So the point about the 777 crop circle was that Win Keach's cameras suffered a complete shutdown. About 8 or 9 cameras suffered a complete shutdown. Now, that crop circle was made by people. It's 1,000 feet long and 500 feet wide. But they seem to have been given an awful lot more time to finish and complete that formation, right? So when their reality was linked to normal outside reality, and this is something that Win Keach has been studying, there was some kind of energetic discharge which caused all his independently run equipment, all the stuff running on batteries independently, all 8 or so of those cameras, all of them shut down instantly. And when he got them all going again in 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe 5 to 10 minutes to get all 8 of them back up and running, there was this massive crop circle. It just had appeared as if, how on earth did he have enough time to finish this kind of formation?
Let me go ahead and ask a question. Let me ask a question, because it seems, if I'm following your thought here correctly, it seems like someone or something has the ability to take a geographical area of indeterminate size, let's say the size of a football field or bigger, and be able to put that into another time field, if you will, that is like a bubble.
Yes.
That's independent of what we look at as normal time around us, that we all experience on planet Earth. I mean, I'm in the USA, you're in the UK, but yet you and I are sharing the same time because we were able to coordinate this radio show. But someone...
if you actually monitor this conversation very carefully, we are able to talk rather too quickly to each other than I think we should be able to. And I think there's a temporal anomaly issue there.
So you think that we're engaged in a temporal anomaly, present time, currently?
Yes. We are talking to each other too quickly. You're able to talk and reply to me too quickly. And I think there's a problem there. I think that this time-space field could be much bigger, if not the whole planet could now be in some kind of different time-space field, even if we're in the same place at all.
Gotcha. So how would we know this? What indicators, what telltale signs, what markers should we be looking for?
Telltale signs are when things go wrong. When Marie was abducted, she came back with her pajamas the other way around?
Oh, inside out.
Inside out. But it's a bit like if you have 10 peas in a pod, okay? To each pea in the pod, everything's the same. Now, if you put one extra pea in the pod, it's still pretty crowded in there, but you only notice when the extra pea enters the pod for a brief time, and I'd say you've got about 2.5 seconds. 2.5 seconds seems to be a golden sort of a time period where things seem to sort of take 2.5 seconds to normalize. For instance, one of the things, so when that extra pea comes into the pod, you've got about 2.5 seconds to notice something.
Gotcha.
When the pea leaves the pod, you've got to have 2.5 seconds when everything gets to get a bit more space.
Okay, so when the anomaly occurs...
I noticed that, yeah.
So when the anomaly occurs, you've got a window of about 2.5 seconds while your perception can really pick up what's going on. After that, you've lost the opportunity to even notice.
Absolutely. And this is when I saw my first scuttler. When I was running the big transmitters, they weren't huge transmitters, but we had a lot of antenna gain on the tower from an engineering point of view. But when I opened up the transmitter at Energy 106 on the Irish border, I saw this huge black spider thing scuttle out of the way, and the term scuttle is very important, but I had an opportunity to see it for about 2.5 seconds. And I know we met on the Kerry Cassidy show, and Kerry apparently has seen these kind of scuttlers. I think she's seen quite a few of them in one go, I understand. But likewise, you get the something which gives you 2.5 seconds before whatever matrix we're in or whatever constructed reality we're now in.
Okay, so let me get this. So we've got about 2.5 seconds before the matrix can self-correct what it is you just got to observe.
Yeah.
Okay.
That means we have got control over 2.5 seconds.
Okay.
All right? So anyway, that covers basically my basic experience. I've been running conferences. This is my first major conference. I was connected with the Amash project, which was the first time that we got a lot of witnesses. There were 4 good people: David Griffin and what's the other guy's name? Oh, Jesus. The Buford guy. Anyway, geez, I've forgotten. We all set up this thing about witnesses and like bringing witnesses and abductees and contactees or whatever up into the front public domain. And my task was to try and get that out there in television, in a television medium. And that was picked up. That was picked up by a major network in the UK a year ago. And basically they trashed us. They absolutely trashed us. And Marie was probably the biggest single target to that, because she's got proof of stuff. She's got MRI scans and stuff in her head. And but Marie's stood up to this pretty heavily. But I think what the target was a year ago, that was to absolutely make sure no abductees and contactees would ever want to come forward from the UK ever again. Well, hopefully we're able to keep these guys up in the public domain, the guys that want to talk. And Marie is an example of a targeted individual and possibly a cyborg, because you're taking control of these implants. And there's another guy here in the UK called Kieran Lee Perrin, who's got a series of scans, and he links with one of his kind of experience links with another guy that I interviewed, a guy called Dave Marrow, and who's part of the sort of British super soldier program. And again, that's a bit of a showbiz term, but it seems that there's definitely some form of enhancements going on for people who possibly have to confront or deal with other dimensional beings or entities. And that's something that I've been checking through in terms of thought consciousness and how that's been altered. And it seems to involve creatures with big eyes and lots of tentacles. And that could be jinn. There could be a possibility that the original species here before humanity arrives, let's make it very clear, all humanity on the planet is extraterrestrial. We are not native to this dimensional domain. And we have had very high levels of civilization in the past. It seems clear that we've gone through this many times before, and on this particular occasion we seem to have an opportunity to break out of this prison or this loop or whatever it is. And I think we may have a new player on the game. A new force or element has arrived, and I think the existing parasitic enemy, which has been holding back humanity of all different types, it basically has to pack its bags. I think the danger we face here is that we have a number of different types of interdimensional or extraterrestrial races here on the planet as humans. What this predator seems to want to do is find out and destroy all the key human races on Earth, but to do so by jumping to their source civilizations across the different universes and to take them out there. So essentially we've got a war here, and this is the front line. It's got to stop here, and only by becoming aware of this and being able to attack and destroy this predator will we hopefully be able to A, let things develop here the way it should have, and B, prevent this predator from attacking all our key races in all the other parts of the universe, which is going to use the DNA here to jump to those other places that all different types of human have come from.
Well, Miles, let me ask a real quick question here. What do we know about this predator? What can we confirm? What do we know about the predator? Because I think that the listeners would like to have some information about that.
Yeah, the predator, now this is where we're limited by language. Okay, now we've got to really not be triggered by trigger words, because this predator has been very clever in that it has introduced a series of thought triggers that as soon as you mention a particular word or phrase, it gets people all, you can't do this, you can't say that. So we have a predator which in the history, we have to start looking at the deepest histories that we know about humanity. Some people call them archons. The modern term for that would be Valon. That connects with the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, and those kind of words, and it connects with the various historic races, the so-called races that we think we are in humanity. And of course, once you even use the word race, it immediately starts triggering people. So I think if we all understand that we're all not from here, and if we understand that there's somebody else not from here that's going to kill or wipe us out in some way or other, and we've got to work together to understand what that is and make sure that doesn't happen and turn the tables on it. Because this predator is not large in number. Some people call it the Nephilim. There's other people saying there are other forms of ET races. It could be the tall whites. It could be, there's all... Putting a name on something isn't necessarily a good idea when you don't really know what you're talking about or dealing with.
Let's avoid the name then, and let's talk about what do we know about it. How does it behave? Where does it live? What does it eat? How does it take its victims?
What it does is, in this time-space domain, the only way that living intelligent souls and entities can survive is in what we know as human bodies made from matter from this earth, right? That's why physical space travel of us getting in a big rocket and flying out there won't work, because the bioenergetic field that the Earth has seems to be the thing which keeps us stable in terms of the physical matter that we're made from, in terms of these bodies that the bodies that we exist in, the thing that's different between us being alive and dead. It's the soul essence, if you want to call it that. That's the predator. And they use us as a mechanism for literally literally spies or an enemy wearing a friendly uniform, and that uniform is our human bodies. Now, what they've chosen is they've chosen the sort of Caucasian white body frame as a mechanism for being that enemy, and it has chosen its designation as one of the races on Earth which are ancient and have a unique position, and they've manipulated their power grid, or their grab for power, very cleverly into taking control of all the planet now, and they now have access to the ancient human technology which we discovered and found and created in our many different times here on Earth. We've been here since the dinosaurs, right? So we have lived and been through this many times, and that particular predator is taking advantage of a series of cycles which we've gone through, and right now we're at our most vulnerable because we're at a wake-up stage, and so our children are now in a situation where they're waking up with a lot more information in them, and now they're attacking the next 2 generations of children. If they can shut them down, then they're going to be able to complete the takeover.
Well, what you're saying, I can confirm through other sources that you were not the first person to share this type of information with me. Although everyone I listen to, I get a slightly different take on it, but I think I have enough of a view on this to see the commonality there. I mean, like you said, there's a language problem, that the language doesn't allow us to really speak accurately. But
I think we've got to try and invent a different language, and therefore use words which don't trigger people's prejudices.
I'm not so worried about that. I think of myself as a rather discerning thinker, but I can see your point where not everyone is a discerning thinker, and not everyone is a critical thinker. So we have to not get them inflamed by choice of words. I agree. Yeah. Why don't we introduce Marie? Let's talk to her a little bit, see what she has to say.
Okay, Marie Kayali is here, and she's Irish. So like me, we're troublemakers.
Hi, Mike.
And this is
Hi
Marie
there.
Kayali.
Well, Marie.
Hi, thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, we've got a break coming up right now, and so why don't we hold on for a couple of minutes? We'll be right back after this break. More with Miles Johnston and Marie Kayali. We'll be right back after this short break. Stick with us, folks. Well, good morning and welcome back. This is Mike Harris on Revolution Radio, and today is Thursday, June 26, 2014. My guests today are Miles Johnston and Marie Kayali, and welcome back.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's our pleasure, Maria. And why don't you tell us about yourself and tell us who you are, where you came from, how you got here. What's the story?
Okay, my name is Marie Kayali, as you just said. I was originally born in Dublin, and I moved to London when I was about 16. Moved to England when I was 16, moved to London when I was about 18, 19, and been there ever since. I started having ET experience when I was about 3 years old in Dublin, and the usual beings coming out of the wall and screaming every night, no one believing me, saying, there's no such thing as go to bed and don't be silly. But I had all the rest of it. She got mental problems, what's wrong with her? She got a high temperature. So I've had a lot of that in my life. Lots of things were happening, but I had a major incident when I was about 18 with my first boyfriend. That was really scary. I was staying over at his house one night, and some disturbance happened. I woke up to all this noise in the house. I thought it was a poltergeist at the time, because although I did see the beings and I knew there was something going on, I never had a full-blown experience where I saw spaceships or anything like that. It was all sort of weird stuff, not space, if you know what I mean. It was things moving in the house, pictures falling off the wall. So I didn't associate it with ET at all. I just thought it was something spiritual or creepy. But my boyfriend actually saw what happened. He claims he saw aliens in the room. I woke up, it was 3 a.m., woke up to all this noise, as I said, and he was shaking in the corner. He'd seen everything, but I was oblivious to what happened. But he actually said he saw beings in the room, aliens, he called them. He didn't say ghosts, demons, he said aliens. And he said they were performing an operation on my stomach. He saw my stomach ripped open all the way down, and they were taking things out of my stomach. He was in a catatonic state, basically. He was hospitalized, and they said he was a schizophrenic, and he was very severely mentally disturbed after that. He never recovered. So I even believed that myself. I just thought, oh my God, he's lost it. He's really lost it. But he never, ever changed the story. He was in and out of hospital, and he's still going around to my mother's looking for me. Have the aliens brought her back? Where is she? Because I just came to London then. It's another part of England. That's why I came to London, to get away from him. And he's in and out now. He's really bad. He's never recovered. So I still thought at that time that he was, imagining things as well. I didn't believe he actually saw that. But then it was 1998 then. I was sort of married and had a daughter when I had the other full-blown experience where it opened my eyes. And we saw a huge ship outside. It was like the moon, basically, not a metallic thing. It was a big light, huge white light, bigger than the moon. And we had 5 hours of missing time, my daughter and I. But my husband, he remembers some of it, but doesn't remember anything. He was completely knocked out, I think. He just remembers us seeing something, and that's as far as he remembered. But that opened my eyes then, and I had to accept that this was really happening. So things have escalated over the years, just so many things. I wouldn't know where to start even. But then my daughter was actually murdered in 2012, and it was funny enough, it was exactly a year to the day that I came forward with Mars when I did my first interview. I did it on 2011, 2nd November 2011, and my daughter died 2nd November 2012, exactly a year to the day. There's a lot of suspicions about her death, which I'm fighting and trying to pursue police things, negligence basically, and cover-ups. The medical side of things have admitted liability, so I've won that side. Now it's the police, but they're playing silly games. As Miles said, I was falsely arrested. My records have all disappeared off the system. Everything's been wiped out, basically, all my calls, because my daughter's boyfriend was harassing her.
Let me ask you a question about that, because if your records are disappearing from the police and through the court system, doesn't that imply that whoever these beings are has help with inside of our institutions? Doesn't that, don't you infer that?
It seems so. Yes, definitely. It does seem it's all connected, because with my daughter's death, it all happened in the space of 1 month. from start to finish. How it started was she had a boyfriend for a year. He was older than her, ex-military as well. My daughter was only 19, he was 30, and she had a lovely boyfriend from college, finished with him this day, and took up with this other one. Well, exactly a year later, she was dead. But what happened was she discovered him talking about her in his attic. She woke up and he wasn't there. She went around the house and saw the attic open, climbed up the stairs and heard him on the phone talking to somebody with headphones saying, oh, it's nearly done or something like that. So she got a bit suspicious, came to me and told me, and she said she wanted to confront him and ask him what was going on, because she heard a couple of other things as well. When she confronted him, that was the beginning, the end for her. She was dead 3 weeks later, basically. It was horrible. He poisoned her. She was in hospital. She was sectioned because of what he'd given her. They treated her really badly in the hospital. This is why I'm suing them now. Nobody looked after her. But there's nothing you can do when somebody is sectioned. I was trying to get her out, get her into somewhere private, but she was only in there for a week. But then she was released, and then her house was raided by the police, and my daughter committed suicide subsequently a few days after that, and jumped out of the 4th floor window 5 minutes after this guy called her on the phone. Something horrible happened to her. I don't know what happened, what he did, or what was going on, but my daughter wasn't into conspiracies. She was an artist and just with her friends and music and all the rest of teenage stuff. She had no interest in UFOs or conspiracies or anything whatsoever.
She didn't buy into any of this. I mean, she was her own life.
No, she didn't read anything, or she knew what was going on, and she knew we were having an experience, and we did see some odd things together, but she wasn't studying it like I am, or researching it, or on top of things and keeping up to date. It was just, well, this is happening and we'll accept it, and she let me deal with it basically. But she was having experiences herself, a lot, very odd experiences.
Paintings.
Well, yeah, she did do a lot of paintings as well with signs in them. Yeah, well, as Miles was saying with this time glitch thing, we had a lot of those as well. I was walking out in the street, we were shopping one day, and we saw time freeze, like people, like a video when it just froze. Everybody stopped except us for it was actually about 10 seconds or a bit less, but it was just so odd. So we've had a lot of those time glitches as well. I don't know what they are, but Miles seems to have a better understanding of that than I have, but I know things have happened and I can't explain with time, definitely. So there is something happening, but I went to Arizona as well last year with Miles to the UFO Congress, and they picked up all these implants as well. And I had another check when I came back from somebody else. We did a documentary for TV, so they bought some equipment and did other tests, and they picked up about 5 more. So if I'm to believe what they've picked up, there's about 15 or 16 in my body, and about 5 of them are in my head and spine, arms. I had one taken out of my jaw, and I think there's one in my eye, definitely. I mean, I woke up with a piece of metal thing sticking out of my eye and caught a glance in the mirror, nearly fainted. I couldn't feel it. Took a picture really quick.
The MRI scans.
Yeah, and it has showed up on the MRI scan as well. But this little metal thing, it was like a little metal silver V thing. Half of it was in my eye, half was sticking out, and you could see a slit. My eye was completely blood red, and within probably 15 minutes it was gone. It was healed over, but my eye was still red. I went to the doctor, and he just said, "Have you been deep sea diving?" I said, "No." And he said, "It looks like there's been some pressure to my eye." And I have had the MRI scans examined by another doctor, and there are some anomalies on there. My eye socket is wrong. Everything's wrong. My eye, there was fluid in my eye that shouldn't have been there, and a few different things. So the things are coming out on MRI scans now.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have you been able to interact with any of these implants? Do they do anything, or what's their purpose? Have you noticed any?
I'm starting to realise they can do quite a lot. I think people did say they could be trackers, but not that many of them, and I don't think they need trackers, to be honest. And they do definitely do something. They are there for purpose, and they do different things. But I've noticed that they can change reality. Your thoughts can change reality. My thoughts can change reality. And it's very scary because I have to keep thinking now what I say about people, what I think, because it just happens within seconds of my thoughts, and it's very scary, thing, you know, 'cause sometimes not all good things, it could be bad things, like when you say, oh, wouldn't it be funny if that person fell off that wall, and you look over and they just fall off the wall, you know, things like that. So I can't joke about anymore like I used to, because when things happen, we've made people fall over and things like that. So, and another thing as well, I had a weird episode with the language. I was telling Miles, I was listening to some African people at the train station. I didn't know what they were speaking, and I was trying to concentrate, and within a couple of minutes I could actually understand what they were saying, and I didn't know what language it was, but I could understand what they were saying. And then it sort of, a few minutes later, after I got on the train, it changed back to English, because I couldn't understand what the announcements were in English, although I knew it was English. So I think that's to do with the implants as well. It was like I switched between languages that I didn't understand before. It's only happened once, but that was just recent, like about 3 weeks ago. So I think that's to do with the implants as well. I'm trying to find out. I'm doing little tests and things here and there, trying to find out what they can do, but I think we can control them as well, because I believe if they're in my nervous system, in my brain, and it taps to me, I should have some control over them as well. So this is what I'm trying to work out what they do. So far, it's very hard to find out.
So maybe that's your challenge, is to see how you can get mastery over these. I would look at this as sort of an experiment. What you're describing,
that's what I do, yeah.
What you're describing sounds very much like what I would call the transhumanist agenda, where they're trying to make human cyborg hybrids, if you will, part man, part machine. And that's, if I just go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I think this is absolutely vital. I mean, what Marie's actually said and what she's doing is she is taking control of these implants. And this is very important for any abductees or contactees out there. Don't play victim. Take charge of the situation. And I think Marie, and maybe some others with her talents and unique abilities, maybe some kind of an experiment in that transhumanization agenda, as you've just said.
Well, I think they can do things for you as well. I use them to my advantage to get people to do things for me. Like if I need a contract signed or I need something to go in my favour, I can do that. You know, it's quite easy now for me to get things done like that.
Well,
I think it's to do with the implants. I don't think it's my ability. I think it's the implants.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is how I make my money now and live. I do things to my advantage and do things the easy way rather than the hard way. And I'm quite well off and very comfortable. So I'm using them to my advantage. And they owe me. If they're using me, I'm going to use them to my advantage. And this is what my attitude is now. It seems to be working. And I think a lot of it does work by your thoughts as well. So this is why you have to think about what you're thinking about, basically.
Well, that's one of our human disciplines anyway, is to control our thoughts. And because whether or not you have implants, what we think about becomes our reality. So
it really is happening, yeah.
So we really have to discipline ourselves and think about the positive outcomes we want instead of the negatives, because many of us are so prone to going dark. We get some piece of news and all of a sudden our thoughts go to the worst possible scenario, and we have to discipline ourselves not to go there, but to go to a positive outcome.
That's true, yeah, that's true. We do tend to concentrate on the negative. For every negative, it takes 20 positives to even out. That's the thing. So they say, anyway.
If this goes back to the connection with the predator that Miles was talking about before, you can see where this would work out to their advantage, because in my opinion, it seems like they thrive off of human misery and suffering.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, Mike. And that's what we've got to stop. We've got to stop that.
And so I think Marie's just got the whole key to the kingdom here, and that is by disciplining our thoughts is how we fight this predator. And so by not allowing ourselves to go to a place of despair or of distress, in allowing and keeping our thoughts on a positive pathway, we can deprive this predator of one of the things that they seem to need.
Yes, I would call it just make us not taste right for them. If we do that, I mean, everything's being pushed towards this kind of negative agenda in media, with the constant talk about war. And if we're not at war, we're going to be at war, or we're going to be scared of this, or scared of the speed sign, or the speed cop, or the whatever. if we make ourselves independent beings who have our own empowerment and positively empower and take a leap out of Marie's book, then we can beat this thing.
Well, you just...
I don't think that a lot of people would do that.
Well, you just said something
I think
very, very, very powerful there, Miles.
I was just saying what Miles said. It's easy to say that, but I think the majority of people wouldn't be able to do that, to be honest. I think most people need to follow something and need to be told what to do. That's the sad thing, that we have so many people who are lost.
What Miles just said, though, was that we all were fed so much things to make us despair and make us afraid. I mean, you look at the media, whether it's the news reporting what is supposedly factually going on in the world, or whether it's some television or movie fiction, which also tells us, it creates an impression in our mind that the world is a terrible and dangerous place, and we should be very afraid all the time.
Yeah, doom and gloom everywhere. I think that keeps your conscious level down. That's what it is. It keeps people's conscious levels down, and you can't advance. And I think consciousness together is very strong. If not one person alone can do something, but a group together, working together, this is what it needs. It's a multiple consciousness, and it's all one, basically. And I think the only way to fight these things is when people join together and put their minds together, and we are all one in the end. This is the thing. We're all one consciousness. The earth, everybody knows one consciousness. It's like a one thing. So when you hurt someone else, you're actually hurting yourself. This is the thing. So we're just basically battering each other day in, day out, and ourselves. But this is what it is. You can't advance in this negativeness. You can't. Your mind doesn't function properly.
Well, let me toss out another thought here, and that is, you look at this predator, and they've not so much been confrontational to us, but they have sort of co-opted us. They've infiltrated us, and have got us to do what they want to do through deceit. Why don't we just turn the tables on them? Why don't we turn the tables on them and apply their own strategies and tactics back to them, so we can co-opt them through deceit?
See, it's hard to do that when you can't even see who it is or where they are. But a lot of this, I find, I know when they don't like something I've said. You just automatically know, no, I shouldn't have said that, and you're going to have consequences afterwards. I do get that all the time. If it's something they don't like, something will happen to me tomorrow, or something really horrible just to give me a bit of misery, basically.
Well,
and that's an ongoing thing.
How do they punish you? How do they express displeasure?
It's like I know already in my head, and things will go wrong. Something will really bad happen tomorrow, and I don't know, just stupid things that give me things to worry about, and just the normal everyday things that we have. Things collapsing, bad news, something you need to deal with, just all these horrible things. So I know when something's wrong, I'm going to get, consequences. And then when something goes right, it's all hunky-dory again. I'll get something, something really good. It's hard to explain. I'm not explaining it properly.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely crucial. They are getting us to do all the work.
It's like they don't tell you straight. There's nobody there. It seems to be. It's hard to explain. It's just in the air, basically. It's just there. They're just there everywhere, in your head. They know everything. Your thoughts. So it's nothing you can see physically, but they are there. I know every word I say, every move I make is monitored for whatever reason. I don't know. But when we were doing
Maria, what you're describing to me here is what I'll call my own moral compass. I mean, I know what I'm doing is right, and I know what I'm doing is wrong. I know all the time.
It's not that. When I say doing wrong things, I mean when I say something.
Doesn't lie to me.
Yeah, no, that's it. I didn't mean it like that. I mean, when I say something about you, like coming forward or giving information away, not doing things wrong, I meant when I say the wrong thing and I shouldn't have said, or things that I should have kept back. I know what I'm supposed to say and what I'm not supposed to say. These kind of things. So I know when I've said something, oh no, I shouldn't have said that. It's going to come back to me now. And yeah, they do want it kept hidden, basically. I can't understand how it's so deep and hidden. It's really hard to explain. You just can't get to it. It's so frustrating. And who they are, what they want. It's just so secretive, and it's been so secretive for a long time.
Miles, why don't you jump in here and give us your interpretation of what she's just told us here? How do you read this?
Well, I think this is very crucial that, abductees or people with implants become empowered to take control of what's happened to them and make it a positive outcome. And secondly, recognizing that there is we have a powerless predator that is using very carefully choice and permission and our decision-making process. We are the people who have got the power to literally change things with our mind and our consciousness. What they seem to be doing is by manipulating that consciousness, they're using our consciousness, our abilities to change reality. And that's the way to do it if you're going to take somebody over. You get them to engineer them, you get them to think themselves out of existence. And that's where this other consciousness, this sort of so-called black goo thing seems to be working on. It's a consciousness which is seemingly to come to correct our failures. So we have to clean up our mess. We have to make our consciousness work for us and not work for them. So, for instance, that's why they seem to tell us, look, we're going to kill you all, the Georgia Guidestones. We're going to kill all of you, right, except 500 million. We're going to create a war here, a war there. We'll tell you in the media. We'll tell you all sorts of things. This is going to happen. I think probably the most recent thing where I think we succeeded in stopping was what was going to happen at the London Olympics, where the BBC ran a teleplay where they basically imagined, or the basic precept was that there was a nuclear explosion at the London Olympics. And this, by a number of people, seemed to have illustrated that this happened with 9/11, that we were told it was going to happen, but we allowed it to happen by giving our permissions away. What we need to do is take control of our permissions and ensure that if you see that kind of thing being told, is to deny it, to say no.
Hey, Miles, we've got our top of the hour break now, so we've got to take a break for like 3.5 minutes here. We'll be right back, and I want to come back and visit the black goo, and I also want to talk about the London Olympics and more about 9/11, because these are critical issues for all of humanity. We'll be right back, folks, more with Miles Johnston and Marie Kayali. Be right back. Well, good afternoon and welcome. This is Mike Harris on Revolution Radio. Today is Thursday, June 26, 2014. My guests today are Miles Johnston and Maria Kayali. And Maria, over the break, Miles sent me a file with your MRI pictures in there, and you can clearly see bright objects where you wouldn't think there would be any bright objects inside of a human cranium.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's crucial to those MRI scans is the lens of the eye has a sort of a rectangular type darkness in there, which infers that there may be some kind of synthetic implant in the lens, but also the cornea of the eye, the eye's liquid seems to be slightly different there.
Well, one of my lenses is actually missing, and the doctor that examined the MRI said it looks like I've had a cataract operation or something. I've never had any operations on my eyes, but he said it looks like there's been definitely some surgery there, and it does show something that's not my lens, not my normal lens. It's not me, not mine. I didn't put that there.
And we did discuss this at the Super Soldier Summit, which I spoke at last year, with a lot of the other super soldiers, notably a lot of English were there. There's been a big row about that. So much of it I wasn't allowed to speak at this year's Super Soldier Summit, which breaks my heart terribly. But crucially, about 9/11, the main point I feel that 9/11 was not the mechanism or the how of the building. And again, it's like crop circles. It doesn't matter what the how is. It's the fact that there's some other basic fact there. Our consciousness was hijacked at 9/11. And the indications, I think, with Harvard University's random number generators, the way that those numbers were altered when the two towers fell is a signature, plus this magnetic field, Earth's magnetic field anomalies, but that's a signature that something managed to gate or gain access to global consciousness. Now, the way to take us out would be to essentially get us to think ourselves out of existence. So by accessing global consciousness, they could then subtly control what we see and believe. I call it the 13th terminal in a 12-terminal network, where there's the collective consciousness of everyone on the planet, which we think we have consensus reality on. But we have a predator or somebody else operating a 13th terminal, putting false information to make all the other 12 terminals not agree with each other, or make them agree on a strategy which will ultimately end up in them being shut down. So 9/11 was a critical moment where our global consciousness was accessed, and they've been working very heavily. The war on terror, all that, is a fear war. It's and it's nothing to do with a bunch of dodgy what sits in Iraq or Iran or Syria or Lebanon or Libya or Israel or wherever. It's our consciousness as being used against us, and we've got to think outside our net programming. We collectively are going to have to we've got to have to think outside the box, literally, on this. Think outside the hypercube, so that we can then get a different perspective on where and what we are, identify where this 13th terminal is, and shut it down, if we can use those metaphors.
Well, Miles, one thing I have to agree with you on is we can't focus on the how of 9/11. You know, the how is less important than the who, and the who is less important than the why. And so one of my greatest disappointments is that our own government here in the USA never did an investigation, but instead was part of the cover-up for this. And it just tells me that, you know, people within the U.S. government are deeply involved in 9/11. And I think you are exactly
yes.
I think you are exactly right that this was a hijacking of the global consciousness, and to create and induce a non-viable fear into us, because we know that this was not a global terrorism act. We know this was something else entirely. This was a staged act of a false flag, if you will, and anyone who is cooperating in that effort is an enemy of all mankind.
Well, all existence, actually, because the very subspace we call 3D reality is a threat here. If you look at what it would take to do 9/11, and if you look at with Marie's case, we have ordinary members of the public. We have with Marie, the police service, the judges, the lawyers, the medical experts, ordinary members of the public, all cooperating to get together and coordinated, all coordinated, very, very important. And if you look at the way that the 9/11 situation must have happened, if you look at just about a lot of these great frauds in public, is it takes an awful lot of people to comply unwittingly to what's clearly a major mistake in front of them. So this indicates that the predator is relatively weak. It relies on us to do everything. So if we're able to get the second degrees, the first degree is the actual predator. The second degree is the operating, the people or the mechanisms which allow that predator to physically operate. So, in other words, if you take a car, the car only works because you put the pedal down and you have an accelerator and the engine revs up and it goes. If you, as the accelerator, happen to be just non-compliant, then the car won't go anywhere. So one has to identify what position you're in, B, where the predator is in your personal surroundings, and simply mildly misdirect their intentions, get their get the predator to have too many headaches. And I think this is one thing that Solaris Blue-Raven mentioned about her synthetic telepathy and the attacks she was getting, is simply give whoever's giving those headaches, give them a headache. So, for instance, with Marie, or people who've got these implants, take control of the implants and turn them against the people who put them there.
No, I agree. I think that's a brilliant strategy. I think that's what all of us need to do. But, like you said, how do we identify? Again, I'll ask, what are the markers for identifying when the predator is trying to manipulate our own internal thought? That's really a key.
Your moral compass and your heart. And that's why so many of us are sort of disconnected from our heart center. Certainly I'm not too well connected. I have my own issues. But Mary has probably collapsed at that.
Well, I think the major thing is you need to know yourself inside and out. You need to know yourself as a person. If you know yourself and a thought comes into your head, well, I didn't think that. Well, I wouldn't do something like that. Why would that thought come into my head? So when you know yourself, you will know these things. I know myself inside out. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm not capable of. And I know what my thoughts are, and I know what are not my thoughts. So I think the basic message is, and the basic lesson is, know yourself inside out. Not many people do. I think, you live day to day, and people are just too busy now with work and everything else.
Exactly.
And it's just a commercial life now for people, and that's all commercialism. That's all people are interested in. And, they don't really get to know themselves.
What we need is to be able to stop in our individual lives and have some quiet time, so that everywhere you go, there's music or there's some interfering thing. There's something always causing an interference, something which is always distracting you, something which is keeping you busy in a way that you can never settle. And in many respects, when you're stuck in traffic and you rather than sitting listening to the radio or whatever, and you're not going to go anywhere for the next half hour because it's not moving, don't get frustrated that you can't get there. Actually sit back and enjoy the quiet time. Private space and relax.
Enjoy the quiet time. See, that's one of the times that I meditate the best, is when I'm on a long distance drive. When you're on a long highway and traffic is going along, there's not much of it. I find my mind drifting into my mind, and that's my time. That's when I focus my own thoughts, and that's when I collect what's important to me. But I liked your comment about getting in touch with each of our moral compass, because all of us have a moral compass, and they always tell us we always know exactly what's right, and we know exactly what's wrong. There's very little ambiguity about this, and I really would urge everyone out there, if you haven't located your moral compass, please take the time to look inside yourself and find out where it is, because it's a very, very good guide.
Well, this is actually a good point to bring in the black goo. One of the people speaking at a conference on August 8th, 9th, and 10th at Marlborough in Wiltshire, the details are on my website, thebasisproject.org, is a guy called David Griffin, and he got some information about this strange substance that in the Falklands War. Now, they didn't know what to call it then, but basically it was an oil which the Argentinians were working with in conjunction with some blue greys in an island called Thule Island, south of the Falkland Islands. Without going into the whole story, basically this black fluid or this black oil seemed to react to electrical signals, and they thought they could control it. So they brought that back to England, and Marconi seemed to have been given the responsibilities to militarize this substance. And after a lot of experiments and a lot of other things that they happened, they gave it to people to make it into super soldiers. So the British were trying to militarize soldiers using the black goo. But it all failed, because the black goo gave these super soldiers a moral compass. Rather than going in and wiping out this family or this whatever it was going to be, they wanted to know more about this particular family. They wanted to know more about the civilization and culture of that particular family. And the whole program basically failed, from what we understand. So that's an indication of the positive effects of this sort of black goo, which seemed to be a sentient fluid, which is black goo is obviously a bit of a messy term, but it seems to be a sentient fluid, but because the British gave this elemental substance, this intelligence, put it into human bodies, it's given this sentient intelligence a massive jump, a meteoric jump in development. So it's now fully aware of human beings and bodies, and is now changing and creating new ones, which we understand will become more effective in about the next 30 years, which is why I keep on saying we've got 2 generations. So my understanding when I felt I was engaging with this consciousness was that it didn't understand that there would be bad people out there that would want to kill them. It was naive. It seemed to have a child mind. So it had to be educated that when you develop into new humans or you start changing, there could be resentment amongst other people, and they're going to want to bump you off. So I think that was a lesson they didn't quite understand, but it indicates that you've got to protect this precious new thing. You've got to protect our consciousness, and we've not got to give our permissions away to this predator, which we A, have to recognize, and B, have to outthink. And as I say, being in touch with your moral compass or your heart and how you feel when you do something bad is one way of doing it.
Well, oh boy, I just had a question. My mind just went blank. I hate when I do that. It's another sign of my premature Alzheimer's, I think.
No, I think it's a sign. It's a definite sign of genius. You're just thinking too fast.
Yeah, well, I've always had a problem with that. That's something that I do is I think too fast. I think so fast I can't write because my mind works so much quicker than that.
No, that's called educated handwriting. I share that talent.
Well, when I was in school, they called it dysgraphia, which is considered to be a learning disability, but that's another story. But there's this black goo here. Now, I've been told that the black goo has been wreaking havoc in the oceans with submarines, and that was one of the major things that they encountered during the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico was this black goo. And they were trying to contain it, control it, cause it to disassemble, and that's why they sprayed so much of that corextant fluid on it in order to get it to disperse and break it up at a molecular level. Have you had any dealings with that or any knowledge?
Well, I'm aware of this major story that was in the Nexus magazine, which involved a major disclosure from all the world's any navy that had a submarine had it there at the Gulf oil spill. Secondly, BP deliberately did that to release that material into the ocean. And thirdly, this is the thing that the British didn't realize, is by bringing the goo from the ice-cold environment of the Antarctic and bringing it into a much warmer temperature, like 40 degrees Celsius warmer in little old England, that gave it an awful lot more energy. We are actually energizing this substance. Now, something which I thought was very important that you shared and I shared was that I started getting suspicions that there was something in petrol because I felt that there was something in petrol that we're putting in cars. And I seem to get a communication with something there. Now, I then thought it was the jinn, because the jinn historically are meant to be released from smokeless fire. And again, jinn is a very broad term. But it seemed to be some kind of elemental intelligence that was here before humans arrived. And in fact, one of our speakers at the First Basis Project conference we had at this little barge in here, which is a lovely place in Wiltshire, was a guy called Tony Topping, and he talked a thing about the Bok saga, which the Lord of the Rings was based on, and that's something to do with an elemental, fundamental life force on Earth, which is expressed in a number of various things involving that. It's a very complex topic that I know very little about, but it seems that there is basically a fundamental life force which which grows and flourishes, and maybe that's really what the goo really is. And by attacking it like that, the predator is attacking this goo. Now that's not, you don't do that with fundamental life. Whatever this predator is, it seems to be against the fundamentals of life itself in the universe. And it's attacking it every way it can. It's attacking the Earth's energy grid. It's attacking the fundamental life forces which go through our into all forms of life. And by discussing this with other people who have got a very broad range of very developed senses, we discovered that there's a series of trees in Richmond Park in South London, which is a very lovely park, that these trees are being poisoned by the toxic energetic energies which are going through that part of London. And they were able to communicate with us about this. Now, this involves some of the most horrendous murders and ritual killings of humans, babies and children, the most recent being a shocking story in Ireland. I'm not too sure if this is broken in America, where up to 800 babies or children up to the age of 9 were ritually slaughtered and their bodies thrown away down a septic tank.
Yes, we've seen that here in the U.S. Yes, we've seen that here in the U.S.
Well, yes. That is clear. Anything at all which affects our children, anywhere where harm comes in way of our young, that should be a red light warning that that's a predator at work. No living thing will allow its next generation, its young generation, every fundamental living thing everywhere in existence protects its young, except human beings. We give up our young to institutions who butcher, murder, harm, and have the most unspeakable acts of cruelty to them. And we've let this happen in our society. There's horrendous stories about this happening in so-called Christian civilization. And this is amazing. How can we do this? How can we let our children be butchered and damaged in such a way because we're all indoctrinated by this zombie mind control thing, which I won't go too much further on.
Well, Miles, I think you've really hit on something here, and I think what you've just said about how elements among our society can be so cruel to our children, that's something that a human being would never do to another human being. We protect our young, and even if they're not of our own culture or our own race, we do a lot to protect children. And so I think what you've just voiced here is a very eloquent proof that indeed we do have something that walks among us, something that appears to be human, but does not have the internal, the spiritual internals of a human, a soul, if you will.
Yes, soulless and without humor, without humanity. And one of the things which I would give a red light to is people who absolutely have no sense of care, people who have absolutely no sense of humor, who can't take a joke, which probably applies to quite a few people. Yeah. And people who harm others. Now, we've had wars, and in wars that involves a lot of killing. That's bad enough as it is.
The wars are continual as well. They never stop. It's always a war somewhere, isn't it, in a few places at the same time.
Well, there is.
And when it does stop, they create another thing, start another one.
But the nature of war has changed in recent history. I mean, we're being more cruel, more brutal, and we're killing more women and children than we are actual enemy combatants anymore.
Well, they're not even embarrassed about it, yeah. They're not even embarrassed about that now.
And the other issue is that in addition to killing women and children, the wars never end and the profits never cease for those who are in the business of promoting war.
Yeah, well, the day after the Iraq War, when they sort of got Saddam, Cameron, our Prime Minister here, was sending out, deals to builders to go over to Iraq. The very next day, the country's in turmoil and they're deciding who's taking the contract to rebuild it. People are still dying and they're just giving out all these contracts to these big companies.
I think the moral fibre of the West has collapsed in terms of look at what we are doing, look at the way we deal with our enemies, look at the way we imprison and humiliate.
Well, a lot of the Iraq soldiers came forward, didn't they, and said they were told to just shoot civilians and villagers, and if some of them refused to do it and actually went on the run, went AWOL, said, I'm not killing people, I'm not killing children for no reason.
I've been in London where certain British soldiers have stood up, and God help them.
A lot of American soldiers as well.
Yes. And that is not fighting a war it's not the
They know it's
war.
not, they know it's not just.
And the people who...
Let me ask your opinion on, the American military has been plagued. We've lost over 100,000 men to suicide, returning veterans. Do you have any opinion on that? How does that angle into this issue?
I think it means that
they're probably moral.
Yeah, really, God bless the American military. They are taking the brunt. The way I understand the power brokerage is that the British Empire basically handed over to America. The American people have been used as the instrument of war by this predator, and they have been fully taken over to do these wars and basically die in the process. And then what you do with what happens to the veterans? What happens to the people who've died for God and country, so to speak, or been harmed for God and country? They don't give a damn about them. So that should point very clearly as to who the real predator is, who the real enemy really is. And I think there's been quite a lot of evidence in the way that our armed forces have been taken over. And the thing is, you cannot go and say to armed services personnel to rebel. You can't rebel. You can't not take orders. That's just lunacy. I know that other great prophets have been saying, disobedience. You're in the army now. You've got to take your orders. What has to happen is that and I think an awful lot of the senior military have been trying to correct this problem, and they've been taken out. They've been sacked. And this means that the level of predator penetration on so many levels, right down to the classroom, to the hospital or wherever, to the army, to the police force, is massive, and we've got a real problem here. So, one of the first ways of dealing with this is A, to recognize it, and B, not to let anybody know that you've recognized it, and very carefully start organizing just small groups, verbally talking, just quietly, just becoming aware with other people who likewise think. Was as with the 9/11 Truth Movement. I mean, it was set up by the CIA so that all the people protesting against 9/11 would all come along and be quietly disinformed and misdirected. So one of the problems is using the internet and stuff like this, but we've got to do it another way. Revolutions have happened before, and they didn't involve the internet.
Yeah, they have, and this is a great segue for a break here. Miles and Maria will be right back, so folks stick with us for the final half hour of the show. We'll be right back after this short break. Well, good afternoon. Welcome back. This is Mike Harris on Revolution Radio, and today is Thursday, June 26, 2014. And I have some housekeeping things I have to do before we bring Miles and Maria back. But I will be off tomorrow. I've got a personal engagement I have to take, so they'll be playing a rerun. I want to give you all, the listeners, a heads up on that. Monday, I'll have Gordon Duff as my guest, and Tuesday, I'll have Carrie Cassidy as my guest. So if you want to listen to those, we'd love to have you. And I want to thank all the listeners because apparently I'm becoming the most popular, one of the more popular hosts here on Revolution Radio, and Studio B is rocking, folks. So tell your friends, tell your family to tune in because I really want the network here to be successful. And while we're on the topic of that, this is a listener-supported radio. Every donation helps, so please go to the freedomslips.com website, and if you could make a small donation, $5, $10, it is greatly appreciated. It allows us to continue to bring this caliber of guest on, where we can discuss issues you're never going to hear about in the mainstream media. So anything you can do would help. We appreciate it. So Miles, welcome back. Maria, welcome back.
Well, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I think thebasisproject.org is going to have a brilliant conference in Marlborough College, and Kerry Cassidy will be there. She'll be live. We're not too sure when her show is going to be scheduled, because I think it'll probably be on the Friday evening. And we've got another brilliant woman over here called Sarah Goodley, and she's a midwife, and she has her own show called the Irate Woman Show. I'm not sure if it's on the
Now that's funny. That's funny. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as an irate woman, right?
Well, let's put it this way. Sarah Goodley is what we call, I better be careful here. I think I better be really careful here. She's what we call a sound woman in Ireland. In other words, you don't mess with her. She could, if she walks back, you'll be halfway through the next wall.
She'll mess you up.
But crucially, one of the things that she's discovered, and this is where we feel that that really, in terms of any kind of a Second World War victory, the German people lost it, and the British people lost it, but most definitely the so-called West or the Allies did not win it. Whatever was controlling or running the so-called Nazis, or whatever that was running, involving that, or what they discovered, won that war. And that is why Sarah Goodley and her information in terms of being a midwife is seeing what happens when the babies are born in this country. And there's a thing called a heel prick test. Now, it's probably got they have got a blood sample record of every baby born since the National Health Service was created in Britain or the UK. Crucially, where I come from in Northern Ireland, they have the highest rhesus negative ratio in any population outside the Basque country. And that is why you have the Northern Ireland situation. That's why it's separated from a judicial and a management point of view, so they can actually isolate the population there for testing. We are being experimented on, and there are other regions of England, like the Lake District, Kent, other regions where there seems to be, and Dorset and Cornwall, where there are sections of the population who are simply switched on at different times of the night, and they're abducted. And this seems to have developed into a very detailed population management and control system. And in round figures, in the States and the Russians, you got the rocket scientists. In Britain, we got the genetics population management scientists, and they infuse very, very carefully into society. And one of the people I interviewed was a lovely girl called Nina Valentine, and her grandfather was involved with the development of MK Ultra in Britain. So, and then my information about the BBC, about how it's controlled by non-human entities at a very high level, and that's where the black goo's been going into their transmission system. That applies to all licensed broadcasters, which is one of the things which answers my personal question is, how did I get so heavily involved in pirate radio, where I was able to establish very high power, independent, so-called free thought transmitters and allow them to stay on. So, I mean, when you put I don't want to go into the details of this, but it's just time wasting. It illustrates that we have a predator at many subtle levels of society and organizational aspects of society, and all arms of society, and that translates essentially across the so-called Western, across the planet now. And I think that the way that certain civilizations have changed seem to follow the influence of music, and the way that the music was programmed to mind control and program people for a next stage of some kind of takeover. And that is why in Britain, when we had this wonderful thing called Radio Caroline, that constituted such a threat. And I never understood, why does a rusting old tub of a boat sitting with a 50 kilowatt AM transmitter off the coast of England and not far from London, why does it constitute such a threat? I mean, in terms of any ratings, in terms of any reach, in terms of audience, why does this rusting hulk cause such a threat? And why does the legislation against establishing another station like that constitutes such a threat. And it's because the same weaponization of the music industry, which has happened since at least, I think, the 1930s with the dance music stations then, has been weaponized as a mechanism of control. But if the disc jockeys on Radio Caroline and a lot of the pirate stations in Ireland they were subcoding the music with their thoughts and intention of a positive awakening sensation. So what I feel we have to do is we have to start taking back control of our media and establishing a positive feeling that comes out of what we broadcast. And that has to happen. I think in the States you've got the way that broadcasting has gone has been very negative in terms of total corporate control.
Oh, Miles, well, that's a major problem we have here in the U.S.
Yes, well,
when Ronald Reagan...
Right now, the corporate control mechanisms globally are going to have to pay very close attention to what's going on at Sky Television. They've got a little problem, and they've got a little black goo problem, and they're going to have to wake up and smell the coffee, and they're going to have to switch off this kind of control that they're doing, and they're going to have to comply or cease to exist. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, let me go back to something you said earlier. You felt that there was a new kid in town that's taking the old management, if you will, the old world paradigm to task. What more do you know about this? Because this is a very fascinating subject, and it's something that I'm looking to understand myself.
Well, I think what's happening is now this is echoed by one of the basis interviewers. People can see all my basis stuff on YouTube. It's Megawatt 1066 on YouTube, or Miles Johnson on YouTube, and I've got about 38 basis type programs out there, and I mean, Marie Kayali's story is basis 19, and we're just about to shoot the end of part 10 of that. It's going to be a mini series, longer running than Dallas was, but what on earth was I saying there?
The basis on YouTube.
The basis on YouTube. If people want to see what I've been doing, I do long format interviews. I try to interrupt as little as possible, and some people will collapse in laughter. But the idea is to leave a long form edit there so that people can just pick up, and that's what Kerry Cassidy's doing, I think, in much of her work, and she's going to be at that conference in Marlborough to start of next month, August. So I'm trying to recover what I was saying, which is very important.
Well, that's a sign of genius. You just
told me, that's it. Good, I remember that bit. Yes.
I was thinking too fast, so I have to give it back to you there. But all right, we've got probably 14, 15 minutes left. Why don't I just turn the format over to you? You and Maria, what is the message that you guys want to get out? I know I've been asking a lot of questions, and I've been interrupting sometimes and things, but what is important for you to leave the listeners with? What takeaways do you want them to have?
Well, probably I'd like to say that all my experiences haven't been negative. I've met beings, we didn't go into that, but I've met light beings in one of my experiences on the ship, and I felt the love from them, that it was just unbelievable, out of this world. And I did see David Jacobs, who did some regression, and I know a lot of people say it's negative, and I've actually had a lot of I haven't had that many negative experiences. I don't remember it negative. I remember conversing, being walked around the ship, shown things on screens, things like that. Whereas David Jacobs, he's doing this hybrid program, and it's all about being examined, being ripped to pieces, and all this. I don't remember any of that at all. I don't remember ever being examined on tables or being prodded and probed or whatever. I think it's probably more about monitoring. These implants probably monitoring everything. I think they're learning a lot from us as well. So I don't know if they're not the same beings. I don't think that Miles is talking about, this predator. I think that's a separate thing altogether. So there are different beings coming here. And I did think the likelihood of having one lot of ETs visiting you was, high enough, but I wasn't open to I wasn't open to thinking that there may be other beings involved, but now I am. I definitely think there are different beings involved. And some are negative, some are positive, but it's not all negative.
I think that I remember what I was saying. Yes, the new kid on the block is those positive new types of beings.
That was a wonderful experience. It was amazing, and they told me I was part of them, and I was not to worry about anything. They would look after me, and I think they do, because I have when I'm really down, things do turn, and someone does step in, and things change for me. So I do have up and down, and I think this is somebody covering my back, definitely.
Well, this is definitely something that I feel very strongly about, that there is a new immense power which is with us. What's been going on here is by this predator is that A, they shouldn't be here. C, they've outlived their welcome. They've taken over the manor. The butler has taken over the manor, and the owner of the manor has turned up, and they're not happy. I think if we could explain it in those terms. But this is echoed by another interviewee that I've done, is Max Spears, and he illustrates that some kind of high council has been replaced, and that high council, the old high council, have to leave, and they accept they've gone through oblivion before, but on this occasion they've caused so much damage that they actually face deletion. That was information was given to me a number of years ago by an individual, Chris Thomas, who said that they've survived oblivion in the past, and when we go around this Mobius loop or whatever we're in, they get back in and they just keep causing problems and whatever. But this has now got so bad, and their intention and their capabilities have got so bad that that they face deletion. That's nothing, not even oblivion. So we have to recognize ourselves that we've got a problem and try to positively cure it. These beings have been given the option of so-called ascension, whatever you want to call ascension, or whatever you want to consider that to be, but they've always opted not to take ascension. They've always failed it, and their own leaders in their particular belief system are aware of this, and they are not telling their own religious or belief system leaders have not been expressing this to the wider group that they represent, and that's a major failure of those particular types of leaders of that community. So I would say that if we go for a positive life experience, life is a wonderful, precious thing. While you're in the 3D reality, it's a fantastic and wonderful thing to have all these feelings, and we should preciously maintain and hold that, and take care of this wonderful place that we have, and think outside the box and protect it. I don't agree with the cloud cuckoo land of everything is high and wonderful, like the new age sort of myopia that people get. We've got to actively protect the precious things that we have, protect life itself, protect the wonderful things that we have with care, but at the same time not become the predator by acting in the same way that the predator does. But maybe you have to fight fire with fire.
Well, that's been a real debate here, because politically in our country, in the U.S., we look at the criminal class that has taken over and infiltrated our government at every level, and they don't obey the law. And yet we're expected to be...
I wouldn't insult the criminal class, quite frankly. The criminal class are a lot more smarter, but I agree with what you're saying. So.
But anyway, this criminal class has taken over our country in the U.S., and so we want to have an honest government back. Do we do the things that the criminal class did to get power? Do we murder people? Do we take them out the way they've taken many of our people out? What is our moral dilemma? If we do that, are we no better than them? And to what end does this go? These are really deep moral questions that you've raised.
They're very deep moral questions, but I have to say that if push comes to shove, we've got to have a section of our everything that has to protect somehow. You have to have a barb. Everything has a barb, or a nettle, or some form of protection. Every form of life has to have something to defend itself with. I mean, a raspberry bush has got barbs. A rose bush has barbs on it. If you attack it, you get hurt. And the passive protection, but ultimately, I think we may be in a situation where if we're going to survive, we have to take some kind of action which is actively going to have to protect ourselves. But we have to be very careful how we do that, so we do not become what we are seeking to protect ourselves against.
Yeah, we don't want to become, like you said, we don't want to become the predator. That's a good point. We don't want to become like the predator. We want to, be, like everyone that I know, nobody wants to hurt anybody else. I mean, we just all want to, go to work, raise our kids, have a decent job, bring home enough money to live a comfortable life. That's all we want. It's pretty simple for most people.
Yeah.
And maybe you could look at it like slaying a dragon. We need to do it to save ourselves. So is it okay to slay the dragon to protect?
Well, that's actually a very interesting point, because at a recent conference here, the Alternative View number 5, that's AV5 conference, one of the most prominent, we had a very prominent speaker there who absolutely went nuts. He was classically mind-hacked and started absolutely gibbering. But one of the things that he was saying, that the red dragon is awakening. Now, Wales has got the red dragon in it. Now, what that represents, it seems that the dragons were a very high level of very civilized beings which came to Earth. And a lot of civilized beings of all forms or one another seem to be coming here through whatever mechanism our Earth, or whatever our solar system, or whatever we have here. And so they shouldn't be blamed for coming here. I think the metaphor has to be looked at very carefully, because what you may feel is an enemy may in fact be your friend. And so we have to be careful on how we examine these alleged enemies. And these other entities and beings, which these other deities that other people seem to be communicating with, we humans have been very badly treated. We've allowed it to happen. We've now got to take charge of our own reality, our own existence, and make sure that we can stand up in the universe with the other great beings and entities which exist, and do that with a degree of pride and honor.
Well, let me ask you a very fundamental question. This is something you said earlier, that we have to withdraw our consent. How do we go about that? How do we go about withdrawing our consent from engaging with this predator? We've given our consent on a number of levels.
The simple message that we seem to be getting all the time is we're told that they're going to do something. Well, as soon as you hear what they're going to do, just let me know, we're not going to let that happen. So they're constantly telling us in the media, they're constantly telling us that we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And these pompous neuro-linguistic programmed zombies that we have for media and for politicians, just tell them, we're not going to accept this from you. We're not going to allow this to happen. We defend the right.
They're waiting for us to do that. Nobody's doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have many different cultures on this planet, and they've got every right to exist. At the same time, we have our rights to exist, so we don't want to give that away. Again, we don't want to walk into our enemy's court and give up our arms or just get wiped out. We have to stand up and fight for our own existence, but not necessarily at the detriment of our so-called enemy, because human history, if it's ever taught us anything, is that our enemies are often our best friends in the future. And we should understand that and remember it. So let's...
Well, a lot of these aren't our enemies, Miles, because a lot of these wars are started deliberately over stupid things. So it's not the populations or the other races fighting. It's the government that starts all these all the time.
Yes, who benefits?
Exactly.
Very good phrase. Who benefits from a given war? In whose strategic chessboard game does this apply? And I think that one of the ways of dealing with that is to break the game.
the majority of people don't want wars, whichever race they come from. They, you know, do you think Iraqi people want to live like that, or Egyptians? They don't want all this, you know.
Break the board game. That's what we have to do.
It's not the people doing it. It's not the Egyptian people themselves. Yeah.
Well, it's not the American people either. No one I know wants to engage.
That's what I mean.
We never wanted to engage in the Iraq war. We knew it was a lie. We knew the press was lying to us.
It's the government.
Well, yes. Well, that was my one of my earlier comments. Is that America has basically been used as the military muscle of this pathetic, weak, and revolting series of creatures who have taken control of our planet. But we've allowed that to happen, and we must now ask those beings and creatures to leave town politely. And if they don't leave town politely, we should assist them on their departure from this town.
Well, I agree. I think we might assist them with a length of rope and a very short drop. That's just me.
Yes, yes.
I'm not trying to speak for you.
Well, I've just seen some messages from Kerry Cassidy, and I'll be delighted to join Kerry Cassidy on part of her European tour here in England. And that's happening when she comes here in a couple of weeks' time.
So is Kerry on with you now? We'll tell her, say hello. Tell her.
She just sent me a couple of messages, and I'm delighted to appear with her at the UFO Academy, which is a delightful manor house in the north part of London, not too far from where the Bilderberger meetup happened last year. And it's run by a very fine bunch of girls and ladies, and they have a nice wide lawn there for drinks afterwards. Delightful place, and I think maybe Kerry Cassidy and I may be a little bit too much for them. They're a little bit very conservative, but we'll see.
Well, if people wanted to attend your conference, how would they get tickets? Where would they go? How do they sign up? Let's give it a plug here.
Right. The Basis Project, the first Basis Project International Conference is at Marlborough College in Wiltshire. The tickets are available via PayPal.